codes, etc. Any thoughts on as to how we might want to consider the role of demographic data that is captured in one unit of observation and relating it to public health data that might be in another unit of observation?
I can comment a little bit on that. I think this is a very general problem in epidemiology because usually the way health system surveillance works, there's a reporting system through administrative units that is tied from local clinics and so on up to a central system. And quite often, especially in the context of epidemics, especially emerging epidemics most of all, that reporting system is going to be much coarser than many of the data layers that people here are used to working on. That may be a little bit different in this context because of all of these new approaches, but I think broadly speaking, we're still quite constrained by the resolution of the epidata itself. And inferences that you're trying to make that are tied to the epidemic need to be context specific. So if for example, deaths right now coming out of the US are reported with a lag on the county level, for example, and regardless of what you do on the other data layers side, regardless of what other data you have, regardless of what model structure you have, without accurate epidata on a resolution that fits with your other data layers, you're going to have a huge amount of uncertainty. Sometimes simulation can be used to get some sense of what the impact of heterogeneities are on smaller spatial scales for the larger aggregate scale. But often that too doesn't provide immediate operational insights. So I think very often in these things you are actually limited by the epidata, not the other kinds of data. So that's always a challenge because health system data is fundamentally difficult to collect. It's got its own bureaucratic structures associated with storage and sharing and anonymization and everything. So I would say in terms of what, one of the largest challenges is that, because you can have all the data in the world, but without epidata, you're sort of in the dark.
Thanks for that. Other responses to that? I think I saw Shin.
I won't say I entirely with Caroline's comment, and my personal experience told me that that's entirely true. And we are publishing a paper. The title is "Spatialization and Individualization is the Future of Epidemic Modeling." That's the title of the paper. What we're trying to say, to argue this is the direction to go. And with that in mind, I have a question. Actually, I'd like to hear the answer from Maple and Doc. I think the GVDE is a great thing to do. It's a great idea. It's great things to do. But I just wondering, and I also see these questions from our audience. I think the most common question is asked about, where can I get the data? If you can share the data with me. And that's maybe 90% of the questions about this. So this indeed give us this, the data issue, the data sharing issue, the confidentiality issue is the biggest, at least it's one of the biggest issues in this area, we all know that. So this GVDE is a great effort, great thing to do, but I just wondering, because from my experience, say from all the specific research project, all the data used are under IRB, under their own data protocol. And all the government agencies have their policies to protect their data, especially NIH and all the health-related epidemiological data. So all the confidential data protected by a very thick layer. And I'm just wondering, say from your perspective, you are launching this GVAD, how are you going to break through those layers to really, get the data to be available, to be accessible to researchers who really need them? This is a high-level thing. This is not from specific research, not from a specific research project. This is high-level thing. As some question commented, this is really needs.
archives of health research data. It's very, very, and the protocols and the confidentiality steps that are taken to ensure the privacy of that data are proven. They're state of the art, and this is an opportunity really for people to, as you say, where can we get the data and how can we get it and how can we share it? And this is a way to share those kinds of data. Obviously, you can also use the GBDE to work on data that is not confidential. But you mentioned the IRBs. The IRBs are so excited about this project because they don't have an answer for a research proposal that has privacy issues. So here's a way for an IRB to say, okay, where are you going to put the data? You can put it in this GBDE where it will be kept. It'll be accessible. People can get it, and they can use it, and then they can even take out portions of it for. So that's precisely what we're trying to do, and I think that if you get a chance to sit down and do that process, I think you'd be bewildered by the extent of data that is available just at ICT's department, not to mention others who could put their data into that GBDE for a period of time so they could share it with someone else.
I also want to address quickly to Sun's question. I think it's a great question. I think there are two different kinds of issues here. The first one being large effort, like for example, the Los Angeles Family and Neighborhood, data set that has a lat long data. And I used to work on that data in enclave, physical enclave, 4 walls, no internet. The no internet really kills the research assistant because they are crying, no internet. So you cannot take anything out, not even a map out from that physical room. And the virtual enclave is similar. Actually, in Europe, there's a lot more virtual and data enclave for geospatial data, for census data. It's more like a culture, right? And I think that so eventually, actually, the LA fence is now in ISPSR under the GBDE, so people can access to it. The second one is that something very innovative, like Sunshi's data, right? So you just got it, and then it's very exciting, and then you want to publish it. And actually, we always also have a way to protect. In the IRB, of course, we'll do all the protection, but you can also, as a so-called quote-unquote owner, data collector of the data or somehow original, from you, that you can actually specify the condition, who you will share, how you will share. Is it mastered, or you can let people use the original one, or you can delay the sharing for a certain period of time, or only to policy maker. So I think that people just have to understand, the flexibility and the ownership and for sharing, and also that needs to have a cultural change. That's a brief answer. Again, we don't have too much time. Yeah.
One of the panel or one of the audience questions is also about the geopolitical nature of data sharing. Obviously, our colleagues in Canada have different restrictions about where their data can reside, and wondering if this GBDE, if the data storage was happening in the United States, if that would limit researchers outside of the country from being able to store and work with their data. Basically,
I'll just give you an example. A French, researcher share the data only with the French, so it's possible. I mean, of course, I'm not saying it's ideal. It should be the way to do it, but I think whoever that put the data and of course have some kind of ownership can specify. I don't know this whether what is behind it and whether this is the right thing to do. That is not within my comment, but it's possible. That's a short answer.
Thanks for that. All right, we're coming close to the end. Are there other questions from the panelists to other panelists that we want to share right at this very moment?
I think that one thing I just want to flow out a concept for people to think about is the health literacy. I mean, like how much, like for example, young people, can they deal with this, and what are they thinking about how
Q&A was about how to do this research in contexts that might not be data rich. So how do we think about these kinds of approaches in situations or countries where there might not be that mesh of data availability? Any thoughts on that?
I can say something about some of the work that we're doing in places like Bangladesh and elsewhere. So at least for mobility data, it's going to be very patchy because, especially if you're relying on GPS, most people will not have smartphones. They may well have dumb phones. So then mobile operator data like call detail records from telecoms can be helpful. But there are other sources of information as well. Nightlight data can be useful from satellites and so on. But the reality is that, again, in those settings, you're going to have even less testing capacity, even less of an ability to figure out what's going on. And we'll be back to relying on traditional methods. Healthcare workers going out, doing surveys, more traditional contact tracing, and using the information systems that already exist for other kinds of illness, like influenza-like illness and so on. And we'll be relying on syndromic surveillance, so looking at patterns of symptoms rather than patterns of test positivity. In those settings, not only is the surveillance and data problem different, but the response is different too. So what policymakers can actually do to control COVID and the implications of physical distancing interventions on those populations is very different in different places. So again, these approaches cannot just be rolled out worldwide everywhere without a regard to kind of what the data is like in different places, what the policy recommendations may be. Again, so I think it's going to be very context specific, not just on the data stream side, but also on the utility of our analytics for policymakers in their response. And so you need a well-integrated pipeline with research, data, and analytics tightly integrated with decision making. And only then, I think, can you start to figure out what can be effective in particular contexts.
Okay, thanks for that, Caroline. And thank you to all the panelists. I'm going to turn this over to Jason to close us out.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I'd just like to thank our panelists for really an inspiring and very enlightening session. I want to single out Matt Wilson for magnificent moderation. I mean, if everybody was looking at their watches, you have to take your hat off to Matt for a spectacular job. The conference organization was done by the CGA's executive director, Wendy Guan, who did a wonderful job of bringing us all here together. And behind the scenes, we had a lot of organization done by Jeff Blossom and Ben Lewis, our senior GIS technicians. Finally, I want to repeat my thanks to our sponsors, especially Este at Esri. Esri has been a wonderful corporate partner for us. Also here at Harvard, the Data Science Initiative and the Institute for Quantitative Social Sciences have been very supportive. And at the NSF, our IUCRC Spatio-Temporal Innovation Center, which is co-led by Phil Young here with us. Finally, thanks to all of you who took time out today to join us. I hope you found this to be as informative and useful as I did. Thanks to all.
Thanks, everyone.
The recording has stopped.
Bye now. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Matt.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's
everybody.
enjoyable.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Then I have a meeting.
Hey, Jason, are you still there? I love this.
Wendy, have you stopped broadcasting?